So the most productive thing I do in my life is stay aligned with good feelings on an hour-to-hour basis. Fall off all the time. But where I used to fall off for a week, for 2 weeks, well, it wasn't even falling off then. I used to get in bad moods for a week or something. Now, bad moods are like a car alarm going off in a quiet neighborhood. And I notice them so fast, so immediately, because they're so dissonant. And I have a process for realigning with good feelings. I'm going to teach you the process. It's super simple. Once I leaned into this process and made it a commitment in my life, a practice in my life became unbelievably miraculous. And I discovered what is written in the pages of the Bible, what's written in the pages of A Course in Miracles, what's written in the pages probably of all great spiritual texts, that a couple things. One, peace, love, and joy are free with no cost, no effort, and no circumstances required. And boy, I wish somebody had been able to teach me that earlier in my life, because I busted my ass to try and get those things. And I went after them in many of the wrong ways. The second thing I discovered was that this is found in the pages of Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles explains this really well. So I've only recently been able to give words to this. That I'm the cause of my reality. That there is not an external world that is doing things to me ever. Most of the population believes that they are receiving the effects of external causes. That is a powerless position. You try and do your best to navigate all this stuff that you didn't have anything to do with. It's just happening to you. You're not the cause. And what I have learned and can recently give words to is, I'm the cause. Not only do I have control over when I feel like things are happening to me, but deeper is, I'm the cause of everything happening to me. Which is profound, because if you caused everything that's happening and you come to the recognition, oh shit, you mean it was me dreaming that dream? Then you can change the dream, because you were causing the dream all along. But I'm going to take this to a super practical level now, but that is how deep and profound and far this goes. This aligning with good feeling. But the process that worked for me was very simple. Catch a bad feeling. As soon as you catch a bad feeling, and I'd like to invite you into my language, catch when you're suffering. Anxiety is suffering. Nervousness is suffering. Catch when you're suffering. As soon as you catch when you're suffering, don't try and label it and resist telling the story of your suffering. There is no story to your suffering. There's no necessary story to your suffering. The only thing that's important now is, oh, look at me, I'm suffering. It's really good to notice where you're suffering. Where are you suffering? That's all I would ask you. All I would ask you is not, oh my God, tell me the story of where you're suffering or of why you're suffering. I'm not interested in the story. I would ask you, where are you suffering? So that you could figure out where it was in your body. That's just awareness, because if you see where you're suffering, you can get out of that suffering just by looking at it, just by looking at your suffering. Nothing else required, except to sit with your suffering, usually speaking 10 to 20 minutes. And that suffering is burned away with the light of consciousness. But that wasn't my route out. I'm not much of a sitter. I did that a couple times and it's profound. My light out is, okay, so I'm suffering. I can feel it right here. And then the second question, what thought led to this suffering? And I knew how to find the thought because I'd figured out I must have had a thought that something shouldn't be as it is. And usually, surprisingly, that thought had come hours before my suffering began. But I could use, you can always find it, always. Say, 3 hours ago, I thought that my life shouldn't be that way. And really, that was just a long fuse to a stick of dynamite. When that thought went by, unnoticed, uncaught, boom, it just began going down that fuse until it exploded in your body and made you feel like the world was falling down on you or the world wasn't right. So once I caught the thought related to the form of things shouldn't be this way, I corrected it. But the correction is really simple. It's, could I allow that it is that way? Why? That should be any rational, logical person's next question in this internal dialogue that happens. Why? Why should I allow that it is that way? Here's the mother doozy of them all. Because it is. What do you mean, because it is? Why should you allow that the food was served 5 minutes slow? Because the food was served 5 minutes slow. And no fucking amount of thinking you do is going to change what happened and what is. Every thought you have against that now, the suffering you're causing yourself. It's on you. Life didn't do shit to you. You're doing it to yourself with your thoughts. And if you continue to have those thoughts, they should have brought that food faster. They should have brought that food faster. They should have brought that food faster. And you're thinking about that the next day. They fucking should have brought that food faster the next day. Who's the cause of your suffering? You, every time. As a matter of fact, you're not just re-injuring yourself over and over and over and over. Every time you let the roommate talk shit for days or weeks, you're overlooking the fact that the food being delivered to the table when it was never the cause of your suffering. It wasn't even the initial cause of your suffering. Your thought about how soon that food should have gotten to the table was the only reason you suffered. There's only one thing potentially that you've ever suffered that was not your doing, and that's a physical injury. You know, like if I hit a hammer on somebody smacks my hand with a hammer, I'm suffering physical pain. Okay, that physical pain's an exception. But it's the only exception, is physical pain. Every single thing else that you suffer is because of your thoughts about something. The underlying thought structure is it shouldn't be this way. So then once I called it sort of, hey, let me figure out I got to trace the lines on this to the bomb itself. That's what I would always feel like I was out to, what do they call that? Like undo a bomb, right? Like those guys that go in there. I always felt like I was tracing the thought to wherever the bomb was, and I was undoing the wires on the bomb. And so once I would say, could you allow that it is the way it is because it is, as long as I could get a yes, an internal, genuine yes. It wouldn't have to be a hell yes, just a, yes, I can allow that it is the way it is because it is that way. You will always feel a lightness, a reemergence of peace. You have dewired the bomb. You will always feel better. And then when you're in that place where you feel a little better and you're allowing it to be the way it is just because it is, then there's another thing you can grab for. And it's amazing. I think it's an advanced move, but it's amazing. You can ask yourself then, is there any reason you could embrace that it is the way it is? That you could celebrate that it is the way it is? Is there any reason you could embrace that it is the way it is? And if you can come up with a reason, you have taken, first you open a crack in the door with allowance. Then when you swing that door open with, I could embrace it, come on in! You have just opened the door to miracles. That's what I call aligning with good feelings. It is not necessary to embrace everything that happens to you. Your life will become miraculous if you merely allow everything to be as it is that happens to you, without putting up a fight, without going to war with that circumstance internally. I know from at least a year or two of experience that allowance alone will give you an internal constant that I didn't know existed. And the internal constant is a profound sense of peace that can't be affected for long. It can be disturbed. A rock can be tossed into the pond and a ripple can spread across the surface, but then it goes back to being the stillness of a pond. But from this place of allowance is this super easy step to embrace of every single thing that happens to you, to a joyous, happy, yeah, love it. It's for my benefit. Of course I embrace it. Everything's for my benefit. Can't wait to see the benefit. And then from there, you can get into the super fun, crazy rabbit hole territory of, I'm creating it all anyway. It's my dream. I'm just transforming my nightmares into dreams, into really nice dreams.